Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. So happy to see all of you here this evening. Welcome to my co-host, Dr. Ricardo Whyte. Always good to see you.
Greetings.
Yes, and of course we have our very own first attendee, the one that's always the first one, Clint Ives. Welcome to you.
Welcome,
See that?
Clint.
Yes, always good to see you, Clint. So we are just so thankful to have all of you here today. Let's see. I'm going to fix my thing so I can see all of you. Okay. All right. Well, just welcome. We have a very exciting topic for this evening, and we're actually going to do a four part series on all because we're just covering one aspect of communication styles that could possibly lead to the end of your marriage. And there's been studies by Dr. John Gottman, and that's where we're pulling this from. That the studies that he's done, that these are definitely precursors to your whole foot is in the door towards divorce. When we start communicating with our spouses this way, so it doesn't mean there's not hope. There's hope. Even if we start down this road, we can always recorrect, but you need to stop what you're doing to be able to do that. If you don't correct how you're speaking to your spouse, it definitely will lead you down that road to divorce. And we don't want that for anyone if it can be if it could not happen if possible. So yes,
Absolutely.
that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. It's actually the what Dr. Gottman calls it is the four horsemen of the apocalypse, meaning the four horsemen that are leading to the end. It's a biblical term. It's a biblical term talking about the end of the world, but he's talking about the end of the marriage. So we're going
And
to be talking about that, but go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, and just in case you don't even know who Dr. John Gottman is, Dr. John Gottman and his wife, Dr. Julie Gottman,
Yes.
they founded a number of institutions, but ultimately it became the Gottman Institute. They're
Yes.
up in what is it called?
I'm glad you know where they are because I don't know where they are. Where are
No,
they?
Washington. They're up in
Are they
Washington.
in Washington? Okay.
Yeah. And we're talking about 4 decades of research. 4 decades of
Yes.
research. So they're very established. Another interesting thing is Dr. Gottman has a background in mathematics.
Yes.
And so this is part of like his leanings towards really trying to get concrete, solid, data-driven approaches to preserving a relationship. And so ultimately their love lab, I think is what they used to call it,
Love lab. Yeah.
is famous for like they would have this environment that's simulated like a real life, and they'd have a couple living in it, and then they would of course measure like cortisol and set up their blood pressure and all this other kind of stuff, and of course record it. But their claim to fame was they could analyze 5 minutes of their interaction, and with about 93% accuracy, they could predict whether they were going to divorce or not.
Right.
And so from that data, one of the things that they came up with was what they called the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And the 4 horsemen is as if these things are showing up with some measure of consistency, there's an increased likelihood for the dissolution of that marriage.
That's right.
Of that relationship. Right. So that just a background on them in case you don't know who they are.
Yeah, no, thank you for that history because it's very important to know who they are and where their studies have come from and where it's brought them. And it's very powerful. They're very respected in the mental health field. And as a licensed marriage and family therapist, they're even his materials actually on the licensure test, the state test. Like not everybody's stuff is on there, but Gottman's is on there.
Absolutely.
So he's very well respected. His research is very well respected. Want to give you guys a chance to say where you're watching from. We always like to know where our viewership is watching from. We want to say a welcome to you. And if this is your first time, please put a 1 in the chat because we want to, again, say welcome to you to here to Mental Health Monday. Clint, we know.
Clint, you don't have to put where you're from. We already know you are from Longview, Texas. Is that right?
Oh, okay, Dr. Whyte, you were like, I'm not going to forget that. Yes, it is Longview, Texas.
Oh my
Longview,
goodness.
Texas. All right, we got Courtney from Georgia. Welcome.
Let's see.
Welcome.
We got
Somebody near
we got
you.
Al Alleman from Los Angeles, California. Love it, man. Love it.
The West Coast is the best coast.
There it is. There it is. You already know.
Yes,
Yeah, Veronica.
Veronica from Washington.
Yeah,
Welcome. Always good to see you, Veronica. All right,
absolutely.
Sharice, this is your first time and you're watching from Virginia.
Kanisha
Welcome.
from Philly. Love it.
Yes,
Love it.
good to have you. Of course,
Absolutely.
Crystal. Always good to see you, sweet Crystal from
Absolutely.
Spokane, Washington.
Love it.
So good to have you on here. Good to have all of you. So, like Dr. Whyte was saying, there's four horsemen, and we're just going to this evening. We're just going to talk about one
One.
of them, contempt.
Yes.
Contempt. And we have a little video that's going to a short video that's going to tell you more about that. And then we're going to jump into this as well. So, if we could play that video at this time.
And I'm a licensed psychologist specializing in couples therapy and relationships. And let's go over some signs that contempt is ruining your relationship and how to overcome it. But first, what is contempt in a relationship? Contempt in a relationship refers to a feeling of disdain or disgust for your partner as a person. It's toxic and causes a heavy emotional, psychological, and physical toll on the receiving partner. Contempt is very different from a complaint about your partner's actions, for example. Contempt takes it a step further, and you explain the criticism by attributing it to the partner's inherent unworthiness. Contempt is the worst of the four horsemen and involves sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, sneering, eye-rolling, mockery. Here's an example of the difference between contempt and a complaint. Your partner said they would pay the bills this month, but didn't get to it, and now you are facing high interest charges. Contempt will look like saying, you never follow through. I can never count on you to do what you say you will do. A complaint is more of, when you said you were going to pay the bills and then I found out they hadn't been paid and we are going to get charged interest, it causes me a lot of stress. Some signs that indicate contempt is ruining your relationship are that you no longer feel fondness, admiration, and respect toward your partner. You no longer enjoy their company or value their opinion. Your relationship instead is adversarial. Your partner no longer feels like a friend or ally. Examples of contempt include you don't respect each other. You and your partner no longer treat one another respectfully, either verbally or non-verbally. You don't give each other the benefit of the doubt and lean toward negative interpretations of their behavior or their intention. There's a loss of trust and admiration and appreciation for each other as individuals. You compete with your partner. Instead of seeing your partner as an ally, you view them as a competitor. You and your partner vie for power and try to outdo one another in one or more areas of your lives, such as work, family, finances. Instead of celebrating one another and each other's successes as a win, you're more likely to resent, minimize, and ignore them. Criticism and correction over discussion. In place of respectful discussion, criticism or correction take over. This sets up a dynamic whereby one partner speaks down to the other, conveying complaints attributed to a perceived deficiency in their partner's character or personality. A corrective attitude implies that one partner knows what is best and feels their partner needs to be directed, which is condescending. Disrespectful body language. Eye rolling and physically turning away when your partner is trying to talk to you can convey contempt and a lack of interest in connecting with your partner. Walking away from a discussion or turning your focus to your phone or computer when your partner is trying to have an important conversation can also be perceived as disrespectful. So, how do you overcome contempt in your relationship? Well, there's evidence that if partners learn about and enact new ways of interacting with one another, it can be repaired and reconciliation take place. An attitude of contempt can be learned from observing parental relationships, and it can be unlearned as well. Here are 3 ways to combat contempt in your relationship. It's important to start with small changes. Start with noticing how your current ways of addressing concerns impact your partner and relationship. Then start with small changes or maybe experiments as you try some of the suggested strategies to improve your communication with your partner. Approaching these experiments with curiosity and a problem-solving lens can help release blame and improve the bond you have with your partner. It's important to soften startup conversation. If you have a complaint that you want to bring to your partner, it can be helpful to soften the startup language, talking about body language or words expressed that mention a concern without blaming or judging them as a person. Be polite and respectful. Express your concern, but also convey to your partner what you appreciate about them. And lastly, don't store your complaints and bring them up all at once. This can lead to your partner feeling overwhelmed and shutting down if they're just feeling bombarded with all your negative energy. Communicate your feelings and needs. It can help to use I statements instead of you statements when talking to your partner. Statements that start with you often convey blame. Instead, focus on how you feel and what it is you need, while being careful to overuse I and not express care for your partner needs or feels. Be specific about what you're asking from your partner. Don't expect them to guess correctly, because most likely they're not going to be mind readers. Final thoughts. If contempt has found its way into your relationship, don't despair, as it's likely to be repaired. It's just important that you're both motivated and willing to put the work in and try out new approaches and behaviors that will likely help your relationship. Ultimately, it can be strengthened if you and your partner want to. If it feels like you need help with it, don't hesitate to see a couples therapist.
All right. Yes, that was quite powerful. And Dr. White, I don't know if you're talking because I can't hear you. Are you muted?
No, testing one,
Oh,
2, 3. Can you hear me? Yeah.
yes, I can hear you now. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, that was powerful. I mean, he just broke it down perfectly.
Absolutely. And you can see there are so many natural elements, natural things that occur in life
Yes.
that can really attack that initial romantic feeling that you had. Like you think
Yeah.
about the early relationship and there's admiration and the googly
Mhm.
eyes and you can do no wrong, I love even your faults. And then life hits.
Yes.
and
Yes.
and you can see how these things can creep in, especially when you nourish bad habits.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so when you start even playfully making your partner the butt of your joke,
Right.
or it can start off. You can start nursing bad habits, and then you now put in place what's going to evolve into contemptful
Yeah.
responses when the natural things happen in life where your partner lets you down, and it's,
Right.
it's not always even the big things, but the little things,
The little
or
thing.
the
Of course.
stressors of life. As you look at maybe stressors at work plus stressors with the kids, and you subconsciously wanting a target to
Right.
kind of lay it out, or a person that you're blaming for it. And that's when you can start to see some of this contempt. You look at this person
Mhm.
with disdain.
Mhm.
uh,
Yes.
what are your thoughts,
I
sis?
was gonna say I like what Veronica said, and when I said I find it interesting because she said he's describing my parents, something I vowed not to ever repeat, and I thought it was interesting. Then thank you for sharing, Veronica, that statement, just because a lot of times we grow up and we see our parents communicating and interacting in this way. And so it becomes a learned behavior once we enter into our own grown adult relationships and marriages. When we uh, get our buttons pushed or triggered or anything like that, then we because what was modeled before us as children with our parents, we tend to behave that same way. But Veronica said that she was determined not to do that, and and so that's not what's happening in her marriage now, but oftentimes that is what happens. It is what happens. Like we don't think of the example we are putting forth to our children who are one day going to be in a marriage and relationship as well.
And I'm hearing somebody say, but you don't know my partner. My partner's not working. My partner's not
Yeah,
holding up their end of the bargain. My partner is really difficult to get along with. And they just have this laundry list. You don't know my partner. It's
right,
almost as if you're saying your partner's your enemy, right?
right,
Well, Christ had a prescription for that.
right.
And we find it in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 43. Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I
Mhm.
say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. And this is not really this is not really encouraging you to not have boundaries, but
Right.
this eliminates the excuse that this person is acting like my enemy. It eliminates
Mhm.
that. It's saying, despite that person may have some shortcomings, you're still responsible for your side of the street.
Yes.
You can't use their shortcomings as an excuse to demonstrate respect, to demonstrate what they are entitled, what a person is entitled to, because you're not always giving based on your partner.
Right.
Ultimately, you're giving based on your identity and who
Mhm.
you are. So this hopefully would help invigorate your understanding of what the nature of contempt is. But
Yes.
later in the program, we're going to talk about what the antidote to
Oh,
contempt.
the antidotes. Yes, that's very important. Somebody has a comment that says sometimes I just go silent because I don't know what to say, and I'm assuming that when your partner is maybe saying those mean things to you, or just some of those things that were shared in the video, and not just not being kind. And so I always tell my couples that it is okay to go silent, but not silent without declaring exactly what you're doing. Meaning, even when we're silent, we are still communicating, because the partner can just fill in the blank because you're not saying anything, but your body language is talking for you. The attitude is very much so prevalent. So you're still communicating. Like, they call that meta communication. Like, you're still communicating to your spouse how you are feeling. But the most important thing to do, and especially even though they're in the wrong and speaking to you that way, you can let them know that you are going to take a time out from this situation. And when they calm down and things calm down, you can set a time to be like, then we can come back and talk, and like adults and respectfully to each other. So I always let my clients know that you just don't go silent and just walk away and don't say anything. That actually can, again, silence is
Escalated.
still, oh yeah, definitely escalate, and
Escalated.
you're still communicating even in the silence.
Well, it
The
also
silence.
is like going silent can also be reminiscent of one of the other horsemen of the apocalypse, stonewalling.
True.
Um,
That's what it
so,
is.
but Charisse, I stay silent sometimes when I know exactly what I want to say. So I've mentioned that before, that
Yes.
that yeah, even when I know what I want to say, I will still at times exploit the power of silence, where as you wisely said, Atonte,
Mhm.
um, you can make it clear that I'm not silent in necessarily frustration. I'm silent because I'm actively listening.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
and that's what you can communicate explicitly, honey. I'm really wanting to hear you. And so that's why I'm really listening to you. And as opposed to,
Right.
you know,
Where you guys can see on Dr. White's face, you can read, like, you see the attitude in the eye, you see it. He doesn't seem pleasant as he normally does. You could see the fake attitude in his face. Like,
you
it's
see
like,
it. It's
yeah,
like,
he was
and
communicating.
right.
He was communicating to us.
Yeah. So you said you're silent, but actually you're screaming.
Yes, you are.
You're screaming, I am not receiving what you're saying. And so, Charisse, we are not saying that's what you're doing, by the way.
Right.
We're not saying that at all. But this just gives us an opportunity to also talk about the fact that you can still communicate contempt without saying a word, without saying a word.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to do the work on this stuff, because people overestimate their ability to not communicate contempt. Like,
Right.
the best way to not communicate contempt is to eradicate contempt. Because
Mm.
if it's there one way or another, you're going to communicate it, whether it's
Mm.
conscious or subconscious. And To not communicate contempt, it takes a lot of energy. That's the reason when you're depleted, when
Yes.
you're frustrated, it just comes out because
Yes.
you've run out of the energy to preserve it. So we were talking before about, when our hair is down, when it's like it's chill time, you don't have the energy for maintaining the face. So now you're just going to let it
Mhm.
out. Well, we can do that in our relationships as well, where
Right.
we don't have the energy to filter anymore. And the person's going to get what's at our core. And that's
Mhm.
why the point of doing the work is to make sure that what's at your core is good stuff. That
Mhm.
way, even when you're tired, that's what comes out.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was very good point. Very good point. I just want to share this point. It says why contempt is so destructive and dangerous. Actually, Gottman feels like contempt is the worst of the horsemen, but contempt is fueled by long simmering negative thoughts about one's partner, and it arises in the form of an attack on someone's on sense of self. Like you are hitting them right at the core of who they are. Like you're belittling them down to nothing. And so that's why contempt is just so damaging to your spouse. And it belittles them to a point where they feel worthless. And then they start striking back in the same way. And so you're supposed to be on the same team and you're fighting each other like I think you said this, Dr. White, they're on the opposite team. Like you guys are not on the same team going for the same goal. Like you become each other's true enemy when you do that.
Well said. Well said. Contempt erodes mutual respect. It
Yeah.
erodes mutual respect. And my goodness, one of the things that we do when we love each other is we show respect for one another. So that's key. And then, of course, it also undermines that emotional connection. And
Mhm.
how does it show up? Because the video mentioned some of it, but it's the sarcasm, it's
Yes.
the mockery, it's the disdainful remarks. Okay, they
Mhm.
just come out. He's always got to be the last person talking.
Yeah. And
Just
you did the rolling of the eyes. They talk about
oh
the
man.
rolling of the eyes.
Yeah, it's if you can just practice not doing those things, even though you're playing, if you can just
Mhm.
practice not to do those things, because it very quickly can evolve into eroding your relationship. And again, this is a hallmark of the
Mhm.
disillusion of the relationship. These are one of the hallmark signs, so you want to be aware of it.
Right. And just want to let you guys know we're taking your questions and your comments in today's program. So you are a part of our program today, as always. But there's something you said, Dr. White, that it takes so much self-control not to react in those ways. And like during the marriage retreat that I hosted, I was telling the couples, I said, to be happily married, it takes the most highest amount of maturity that you can get in this world, that you can create, that you can muster, because it takes that much maturity to be able to rationalize with yourself and say, okay, I should not say that. That is the wrong thing to say at this time, even though my feelings and my emotions are telling me to scream that out in the meanest way right now because I feel it so strong. That level of maturity has to be able to take control over you to calm you down.
Well, it's the reason I loved Sharice's statement where she's like, I am quiet at times. I found it so important to be quiet and at times to be sparing in my words. And I love that
Mhm.
we're picking up that can be a passive aggressive way to be,
Right.
aggressive as well. But no, from a adaptive standpoint, from a positive standpoint, your words are so key. Let me drop this, right? We know God is infinitely powerful, right? God is infinitely powerful,
Mhm.
but even God is bound by his words.
Mm.
When
Yep.
when he utters
Mhm.
something, he is now imprisoned by that statement.
Mm-hmm.
If he's
Oh,
promising something, now he is bound by that. And now let's make that more relevant to us. Like, my day might be free tomorrow until I say, well, I'm committed to a date with my spouse. Okay, now I'm bound by that. Your words bind you. And when you are sensitive that you are your words, you would utter them sparingly.
mm-hmm.
You would utter them sparingly. And so in an argument, or especially in an interaction with your spouse, you really want to be careful with your words, because your words are that powerful. You have to live within the prison of your words. So you really want to be sparing. But yeah, I think what you said is incredibly profound about how important it is to be careful
Mm-hmm.
with what we say, and fighting back the urge to say things that are not going to be helpful. And I also love that you also said that the discipline of having a fruitful marriage can help you in so many ways, and
Yes.
especially even in your professional life. That
Mm-hmm.
discipline of learning how to behave sometimes in ways you don't feel like it. Of course, you
Mm-hmm.
would love to give full vent to your words, but you would burn down your relationship, and you would singe something that all the apologizing in the world is not necessarily going to fix,
Right.
especially if you would have just not said it in the first place.
I was just gonna say that the man, you just took it right out of my mouth.
No,
But
no, go ahead. Go
that's
ahead.
no. It's because we're on the same page here. It's like the time to be silent is, and that's from the spouse to saying those words that are showing the contempt that you have for your spouse. That's the time it is to be silent. Like, don't say it. Don't say it. And that takes, again, the highest level of maturity, because your passions and your resentment and all of that stuff that has built up is taking over you. And it's almost like you feel like it's forcing you to just say this, but you have to have control. You have to
Absolutely.
have control.
Absolutely. Look at Clint pushing us to the solutions. You see this?
Yeah, I
He's
see it.
like,
I see
he's
it.
like, he's like,
He's
enough with the pathology. Get to the physiology. Get to the solutions. Which, by the way, Clint, is something that I really enjoy, because I can't
yeah,
stand when 95% of the presentation is the problem, and then you get to they're running out of time actually
it's
when it's
like
start talking about
10
the
minutes before
solution.
it's over.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
he's our third co-host. You're our third
exactly, we
co-host.
got to bring Clint on at some point. But yeah, what do
Yeah,
we
we should. I
do?
don't even know what Clint looks like, to be
Oh,
honest. We have to bring him
yeah,
on.
it's gonna be, but yeah. No, good question, Clint. What do we do to not grow complacent and become more self-aware? What tools can we use? So that's great. So
Yeah,
that's we're gonna let that kind of clue us to shift over into, okay, what is the
the
antidote?
antidote.
What is his recommended antidote to contempt? And his antidote is cultivating respect and empathy. Cultivating respect and empathy. Um, Emerson Eggerichs has a book, Love and Respect. So there was a time that I was really deep diving and seeing, what does anyone who is an influencer in the space of couples therapy, what do they have? And so the book that he wrote was the book Love and Respect. And basically the premise is that men value respect and women value love, was his premise.
I've
And
read that men value respect even more than sex.
hmm, where did you read that heresy?
I know. I should know where I read that, but it was recent
where,
too. I'll
where
have
did
to.
you,
I can't remember, but I will
now?
have to find out. Meaning,
No,
like
I go
he
ahead. Go
said
ahead.
that,
I'm
that
sorry.
this person was saying it's a myth, and this was a male. This was a man saying that, that men love sex, like, and that it's more important than sex is more important than respect. But he would say, no, they crave to be respected. And of course, their desire for sex is right up there, right with it. But they want to be respected and feel appreciated and loved for who they are. And that's the biggest thing that men need. They need the respect. And then of course the sex follows quickly right after that, but
She said quickly. Um,
very quickly.
I can definitely identify with the statement because it's a tremendous turnoff to feel disrespected.
Yeah.
Like if you've been jolted with disrespect, it's like it completely takes your brain out of let's get busy,
Yeah,
So
right.
and I don't know about, but like I find that one of the preambles I need is we need to on some level resolve what conflict we're having,
Mhm.
and then my mind can shift. So no, I think I can see the wisdom in it. But what that author was probably doing was just trying to help shine a spotlight on how important respect is. Well, I think it's pretty easy also to see that it can be crushing to a woman to experience disrespect. Yeah,
Mhm.
it can be absolutely crushing.
Mhm.
But the bottom line being, respect and nurturing respect is important. So, Clint, some of the practical tools for preserving empathy and respect is, for example, rehearsing what you saw in one another when you first met. Reciting your love story. One of the things that Gottman does talk about is when you listen to couples tell their story,
Mm.
how they tell it is important in terms of it being, a predictor of good outcomes.
Right.
So for example, when they tell it with love, when they tell it with, it just, you just feel I love asking that at dinner parties, man. Tell me how you guys met,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it just it makes you think of your own relationship, but it's just adorable because you can envision them back when they were kids and having those funny moments and the awkward introductions and seeing that blossom into a beautiful family. It's just beautiful, but it can be helpful to remember what you saw in the person.
Mhm.
It can be helpful to recite that, and it kind of brings you back to your foundation. This is why we started this. And remember, we promised that we were going to end it together. We were going to ride out into the sunset, together. So I would say that's part of why it's so important for us to find time where we're able to recite that. Clint,
Mhm.
also putting yourself in the company of wholesome couples where you can hear those stories and you can recite that, hear it, be inspired by it. These are things that can absolutely feed you. So I know for me and my wife, sometimes we really struggle during the week, but we got date night. We got date night,
So
and
important.
and come date night, it's like we really make it a point to follow through on date night.
It's so
Um,
important. And the boundary, put a boundary
around
around
that,
uh,
around that,
nobody can cross over. No
and
one.
and and most people that mean well for you, they know they don't even. They're like, that's your date night, right? So we can't plan anything then,
That's
So
it. I love that. I love
yeah,
that. I love that
yeah.
your closest people know. I
Yeah,
wanted to share another antidote
please.
that Dr. Gottman talks about, an antidote to contempt. He says the first way to do this is to start small and describe your own feelings and needs about any given issue. Try to avoid using you statements, which can make your partner feel blamed or attacked. So he actually gives an example. He says, I'm feeling neglected sexually. I need physical connection. Can we talk about how to make that happen so it works for both of us? And that's what he would call a soft startup as well. Like it's just, hey, I'm letting you know I'm not happy here, but the you statement, but he didn't, or this person didn't go into saying you, because then the person would feel automatically attacked, and then their defense mechanism, I call it the wall, goes right up. Like it's just like this wall that just boop, it goes up, and there's no more. You can't connect with them. You can't get through to them. If you keep talking after they feel attacked, I always tell people you're basically wasting oxygen and your energy because they're not hearing you anymore. But the way that that was stated, I'm feeling neglected sexually and I need physical connection. Can we talk about how to make this work for both of us? Because we're in partnership here. We're on the same team. Let's try to figure out how we can do this together. So
No
nobody feels attacked. Nobody's blamed.
No, I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
And I think the word I want you to get into your thinking right now is the word repair. There
Mm.
are going to be ruptures. There are going to be breaks. There are going to be situations where you behave in a way where when you reflect on it, you're like, man, that wasn't perfect. That wasn't
Right.
perfect. I could have done that better. And here's the thing. One of the things they talk about is repair. So very quickly figuring out how to go back and how to repair. And one of the things that's important that'll help you as far as even adopting the spirit of repair is empathy. Okay.
Mm.
So the
Yes.
antidote
Lots
is
for it.
cultivating respect and empathy. And what empathy does is you drive down the volume in your head of why you're right. Okay? Because that's just blaring. Okay, I'm right because of this and because of this, and you know he's wrong because of this and this and this and this. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the enemy talking to you. Okay,
Mhm.
because in
Mhm.
addition to how good you feel, your blood pressure is like way up. You know,
Right.
you're increasing the risk of some kind of coronary event or some sort of cerebrovascular event. If you really pay attention to it, it really doesn't feel good. It feels good and it doesn't feel good. And
Mhm.
the still small voice is, okay, well, what could you have done differently? How did you contribute to it?
Right.
And it's not just about beating up on yourself, but it's an attempt to garner empathy. I feel like this is a great place to let you know we are not your therapist. We're not your therapist, and we don't know your situation. So
Right.
you have to be very careful in terms of what this inspires you to do, because let's say, for example, you're dealing with an absolute categorical narcissist. Official
Mhm.
diagnosis, not just
Not
I don't like you, so you're a narcissist, but no, a
right.
true narcissist.
A true
Like
narcissist.
you really should get guidance with how to respond to that. And just
Mhm.
saying and just being, being a doormat is definitely not what we're recommending. So
Right.
that's the thing. So you have to kind of this is why we strongly encourage you get some support. But
Yes.
what we're talking about is, man, the ability to have some self-awareness of this is what I'm contributing.
Mhm.
I could have said that softer. I have better ways of saying that.
Right.
She has told me about this over and over again, and for some reason, I'm really just not paying attention to it.
Mhm.
She was tired. She was hungry. He has communicated that he struggled in that area before. And like when you start really disciplining and forcing yourself to be empathic,
Yes.
that's when now you can do that slow startup that Atonte mentioned.
Mm.
But you can genuinely move towards that person and say, you know what? Obviously we didn't get together to fight like this. Let's move to where, here's what I'm hearing you say. This is where I can talk about the how to stop an argument, which we've talked about in a prior series. I'm pretty sure I've told you
Where
about.
you don't say the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, sixth, seventh thing. No? What was
Well,
no,
that's
not
step
that one?
one. But I'm saying number one, what are you hearing me say? What are
Yeah.
you hearing me say that might be upsetting you so much? Because sometimes that's
Right.
an opportunity to repair and clarify.
Oh, yeah.
Then it's here's what I'm hearing you say. Here's what I'm hearing
Mhm.
you say. Am I hearing you correctly? And then it's okay, well, this is what I can take responsibility for. This is what I can
Mhm.
take responsibility for. And then is there anything you can take responsibility for?
Right.
And hopefully you've modeled a good job, and so you're getting closer. And then it's very careful. This last step is okay. Now you've decided that it's time to end it. You're hungry, you're starving, you're sleepy. It's not later for you. That is not
Right.
spirit that will explode everything. No, it's I value you. I love you. I care about what you're saying, and I
Mhm.
want to hear you. So I want to position myself to be able to hear you even better. So I got to get some sleep, or I got to get something to eat, or I need a little distance from this.
Mhm.
And I promise we will come back at the appointed time, and you follow through with that appointed time, or you'll
Right.
shred all your credibility. But that's what we talk about at the Mastermind Institute, with what's that process for stopping an argument and at the same time communicating to that partner that you love them.
Yes. Again, that takes the most maturity that you can muster when you've been hurt or you're feeling hurt or anything like that. But the way you said it is just absolutely perfect, and that's how it should be done. And I was going to say, because he talks about baby steps, right? So you're coming out of a space where both partners have shown each other contempt, and so they have resentment in the marriage. And so even if you come at your partner exactly how Dr. Whyte just described, with that wording, with that attitude, with that soft startup, and they're trying to read in between the lines, like, are you trying to say, and they're trying to turn it negative, because this is human nature, right? So you still have to, I mean, it's baby steps. So you have to be aware that maybe they're not quite where you are yet. So don't be tempted to jump into that same spirit. Just keep that soft spirit that you have, and eventually, when both partners are committed to this, it will turn into the right direction. But it's possible that you could come with the right spirit. I wouldn't want someone to come with the right spirit and do everything that Dr. Whyte just said, and the partner still doesn't quite respond in the right way, and then they get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. Continue to come in that way with that soft startup. And again, if that partner is also just as committed to you as you are, that partner will also come along on the side where you are at, and start traveling down the road together. And then you both will start communicating in that way.
Yeah. So well said. And so MI asked this question: can some behaviors / responses be cultural, kind of like the dozens? Now, for those of you who don't know, the
I don't know
dozen
the dozens, but I do know it's cultural. But go ahead.
well, the dozens is like you remember the yo mama jokes, like yo mama this and yo mama that. And I think the dozens is kind of a take off of that, if it's not exactly that.
Okay.
Well, let me just say that divorce is a $50 billion industry, at least, right? So
Yeah.
I would never want to allow the fact that it's cultural to lead me to be complacent and jeopardize me losing half my fortune, So cultural or not cultural, behaviors that don't move us towards a sustained relationship needs to be done away with, and you need to embrace a culture that supports a thriving relationship. So
Right.
that's how I
A
would.
happy marriage. Meaning, just because something's cultural does not make it right, and it doesn't
Right.
mean we can't change. We need
Oh,
to
you
be
have to be
mature.
doomed to that.
We have to be mature enough to step out of the negative things that the culture produces, and actually lifts up, right? Some cultures
Yeah,
lift up that type of talking to their spouses.
absolutely.
All right. So we have
Do
another question.
From Deborah Hailing, do you think it's because people are so accustomed with their spouses that they feel they can say anything good or bad without considering how they feel? So Deborah is talking about the creeping complacency that can take place
Yeah.
as you start losing the feeling that you could lose that person. Like
Right.
we can start getting really comfortable and really kind of taking the person for granted when we start feeling like, oh, they'll never leave, and
Yeah.
yeah, this is just my old ball and chain. And these are not healthy attitudes to have.
No, it's not.
Um, so yeah, I think some of it can happen when one get accustomed. But Deborah, contempt is definitely of a more pathological nature, as opposed to just
Mhm.
the passive, natural, endpoint. No,
Mhm.
contempt is some deep-seated,
Resentment.
subconscious and conscious resentments that kind of boil over and erode at the relationship. Veronica, I love this question. Transparency. I take more than I give. My husband helped heal a lot of my wounds. It's
Mhm.
worked for a long time, but could this be dangerous? And I'm thinking that this is alluding back to transparency. Now, I have a, you know, I feel like truth in a relationship is very important. I feel like
Very
the
important.
bedrock, like one of the best ways to demonstrate respect, one of the best ways to demonstrate love is truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like truth occurs on two levels, one of which is honesty. So responding truthfully when you're asked and prompted, but then transparency is an even deeper and more honorable level in which
Mm-hmm.
you are truthful even when not prompted.
Right.
Truth without prompting is what I term as transparency. And it's a powerful thing to be able to look at your spouse and be able to see right through them because they are
Mm-hmm.
transparent. You don't look at them and it's a brick wall because you just don't know what's going on. You can look
Right.
through them and you have a feeling that you understand exactly who they are. That is a tremendous gift to give to someone
Mm-hmm.
you love and respect. So I can't see how that would be dangerous,
Right. I don't see it
except,
either.
except when it's not mutual and
Right.
just one
You,
directional, you know. So you're
correct.
transparent,
Correct.
and if that other person does not mean well for you,
Right.
so it's a dangerous thing to put trust in a person who you are not sure means well for you. Well, that's the equivalent to putting your heart in the hand of a person who really is not entitled to it and really will do it harm. It's like opening yourself. So that to me would be the danger, Veronica, if the person was not worthy of that trust, if as evidenced by a prior consistent history of violating that trust, well, that's when it can get really dangerous. Transparency can be
Mm-hmm.
incredibly dangerous because you basically articulate your vulnerability. That's ultimate intimacy when you think about it. When you can actually share your vulnerability with a person and know that you're safe to do so. Ooh, that's beautiful.
It is. It is.
But that's earned, and that's earned over time. And
Mm-hmm.
one has to be very discerning and wise about who really deserves that. So, Veronica, that's a great question, and those are great
Yes.
issues to kind of wrestle with from a therapeutic standpoint, to be perfectly honest with you. But that's a
Right.
great question.
Right. It is. Thank you, Veronica. Cherie says, so how do you change your inner language?
Yeah. So on my LinkedIn, I posted a quick little 5 minute uh, video on the neurobiological elements that support mastery and our capacity for mastery. And one of those is neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm.
And in discussing neuroplasticity, one of the things that you highlight is that your environment will actually impact your brain. So the environment you immerse yourself in, it will then
Yes.
feed and it will impact you. So, Charisse, to change your inner language, sometimes you have to immerse yourself in an environment that's going to stimulate the language that you're wanting. So, practically speaking, Charisse, sometimes you have to be around the kind of people who see the value that you have, who recognize the value that you have, and who celebrate the value that you have.
Mm-hmm.
But you yourself have to also change that inner language and be comfortable and learn to be comfortable giving yourself that positive feedback and
Right.
actively changing that inner dialogue, monitoring for the negative inner dialogue, the dialogue that says that you're less than,
Right.
capturing it. I talked on another series about interrogating your thoughts. Interrogate.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let those thoughts just happen passively. Interrogate it. Assess it. Wait, is this something that's true? Is this
Mm-hmm.
what I want surrounding me? Do I really
Right.
want to see myself as inferior and undeserving and do I want to, or is that a false thought? Interrogate it, because
Right.
then you replace it with thoughts that are actually congruent with your goals, emotional, fiscal, otherwise.
Right.
Making sure that that inner dialogue supports where it is that you're trying to get to.
It's very important. I mean, just like I work with clients for their negative self-talk about themselves, what they're saying negatively about themselves. You also want to work on the negative self-talk that you have about your spouse. So, if you're saying negative things in your head about your spouse all day long, then when he comes from home from work or when you guys are together and the littlest thing sets you off, you're going to say those negative things to each other. And so it's important to watch that negative self-talk in your head about your spouse. Like, don't let that negative self-talk take rent in your head. Don't let it take up that space. I just want to, as we're getting ready to close soon, I did want to bring up another antidote that Dr. Gottman speaks of. He says, really working on, well, he's talking about working on the relationship, trying to reconnect. Because if you have that much resentment where your communication has a lot of contempt and has these mean words, you're not connected at all. You're not like this. This is where you were when you were dating, when you first got married, you were connected. And then after years of marriage, there's so much junk here in between. There's so much contempt that's how you start speaking to each other. You need to reconnect. And one of those ways he talks about talking about the happy events of the past. It helps many couples reconnect, talking about those happy moments. Remember the good times and also remember the tough times, but how you guys pulled through it together. It like just reminds you of your first love and how you were on the same team, even when you went through something and you did it together. You were winners together. And so it just makes you fond of each other again. These are small little things that you can
But
do. This is a process.
potent, small but
Yeah.
powerful. And just dovetailing off of that, and sis, maybe you said this before, rituals, rituals, building into your relationship rituals. So you make it systematic that you guys connect on an emotional level. And this one's a freebie. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Can you make it a point that, on a daily basis, at minimum, you guys come together for 10 minutes of undistracted time? Undistracted. Not even necessarily sexual, but like intimate, like where you're dialed in. Oh my goodness. And the phone, guys, no phone.
Turn the phone off.
Come on, no phone.
And the computer needs to shut down too.
Leave it in another room. This, even with it just being present, it's kind of offensive. So you put that aside. Now, obviously, if you're like us in the medical profession, we're a little tethered and we can't necessarily just put it down, especially if we're on call. But finding and being creative and finding ways to make sure that you can be dialed in, you can be absolutely dialed in, because you want to talk about showing respect. You want to talk about showing love. That's critical. And I just want to add just the little piece like that you were talking about. It's gratitude. Gratitude. There is something, some way you can find something to be grateful for what that person's done. I mean, come on.
Of course.
You can find something to be grateful for. All right. Even if it's the body warmth when they lie next to you, okay? It's something, right?
Not 100% evil for sure.
I'm saying. And if you think they are, there's a problem. I'm just kidding there.
Because, okay, I know.
Yeah. There might be evil, but I'm just saying we're just talking about in general.
Right. Well, I was going to say something because when you said that about spending the 10 minutes, something I have to say, I don't even know the name of the company, so I'm not doing a plug for this company. I don't even remember. I think it's called connection cards. So I don't even know how many connection cards. And my husband bought this for us. And so on our in-house date night, we do these connection cards. And I have to tell you, a few nights ago, because you're saying 10 minutes, like we thought maybe it would be maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20. We started talking for like hours. I mean, I don't know, it was almost 2 hours. And I learned so much about him. We've been married for 25 years, but they give you prompts like, so you're asking your spouse this. So maybe I never asked him that. He's never asked me that. And it opened up and it took it so many different ways. It was like the most amazing experience. And so if you say, okay, well, what are we going to talk about for 10 minutes? I say if you need help like that, get those connection cards or get something like that that just helps you to connect, because there were no phones, no computers, no kids, nothing, no church members. There was nothing. It was just us.
Well, I saw the coolest game. I mean, it was the coolest game, and it was on one of these Netflix series. But in the game, like they play this thing where you ask a question, and in your response, you have to end with a question. I just thought that thing was so super cool because how many of us have been like struggling to maintain the discussion, and you have to come up with question after question after question, as opposed to look. I'll ask a question in your response, end with a question.
And
And
we
so you
had
go back and forth. It's so cool.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I encourage that. I encourage that. So, yes, guys, you can, continue to do your own research. A lot of Dr. Gottman stuff is online. And so, if you want to know more, we're just like scratching the surface here this evening. But if you want to know more about contempt and that type of communication and ways to stay away from that and reconnect, if you've been experiencing that in your marriage, then definitely continue to do your research, and just consider, again, the different antidotes that can help to remove contempt out of your communication and your relationship. So we just want to say thank you for being with us this evening. You make Mental Health Mondays. All of you are our third co-host, because your questions and your comments, you make this program work. Make sure you share this program and subscribe to Living Man, a YouTube channel as well. So subscribe and share and like the link as well. And we will be back with you next week. We will be doing another horseman that Dr. Gottman talks about. We haven't chosen which one yet, but just make sure you want to come back, because there's other communication styles that also can, predict if you are headed in that direction of divorce. And so we want to give you all the knowledge that we can help give you, so that if that is the road that you guys are on, you can course correct and go the different direction. So again, we want to thank you for being here with us, and we will see you next week on Mental Health Mondays. Have a good evening.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.